Hey everybody, what's going on? This is once again Big Sad from the industry Cosign. And as usual, I have a great friend on the other side of the screen that for people that's tuning in for the first time, the purpose of this platform is I've been interviews doing things for many years. And as much as I used to enjoy speaking to like entertainers and celebrities and people like that nature, I honestly don't care anymore, except for the ones that are my friends.
Hey,
But I decided to utilize my platform for my actual friends and people who are actually doing things, have done things, continue to do things. So that way you can, if you don't know the person, then at least you can know them by the end of the interview. And like I said, I have so many dope friends that I have more friends than I have celebrity friends. Then so today we're in for a treat. We were talking earlier, and we actually grew up in the same area without really knowing that we grew up in the same area. And I want to introduce Jackie O Asari, and we're going to get into like what she's done and what she's been doing. But I can't remember when we met, but I think it was maybe like I don't know, but it was many years ago. We both were
just
studying
somewhere
in
in those hip hop streets. Somewhere in
yeah,
those hip hop
in
streets.
those hip hop streets. We're both in the Bronx, so you know, BX always BX strong. And why don't you give them a little intro of who you are, and then we'll start from there.
Well, my name is Jackie O Asare. I'm a publicist. I have been a publicist forever. I'm happy to say that I got a chance to enter this industry at the height of its golden ages, or the early 90s. That moment cannot ever be duplicated.
Mm-mm.
I grew up in Parkchester in the Bronx, left and went to Howard University. Right now, I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been here since 2007. I started my career as a publicist um, in New York. My first job was the assistant to Yvette Noel-Schore, who most of you know is Beyonce's publicist, Chloe and Halle. That's who I learned from and where I learned. The other person that I learned from was a publicist by the name of Miguel, and he was handling the miseducation of Lauryn Hill when that came in. So just given that information alone, I'm vintage. I've been in these streets for a bit. So that is my background. I started out in the music, and now I do a lot of film. When me, I was probably working at Loud Records as director of publicity. I was also at Priority Records as manager of publicity. So I started at Columbia, went to Priority Records, Loud Records. Loud was sold to Sony, and when it happened, I just decided that I was just going to become an independent publicist. I was not going to put my life into anybody's hands anymore. I wanted to work the types of projects that I wanted to work. I also wanted to have control of my career. So um, I just started becoming a independent publicist, and I've been so for over 20 something years, maybe about 25 years.
Yeah. So congratulations on still being involved, because we know there's a lot of people who started in the time that we start that either got frustrated, couldn't get a job, or just got tired of the business, because this is one of the businesses where you've got to either be making a lot of money to stay in it, and even if you do make a lot of money, or you get out of it because of frustration, or you have to be dedicated to what you want to do as opposed to what you're doing. And I think people don't understand. I mean, of course, it's like that in any field, and like medical, whatever. But entertainment is definitely a horse for different color, and you have to be strong in order to want to be involved and stay. And congratulations for still being here as an independent, because I know that we have a lot of our colleagues who wanted to go independent but either couldn't handle it. And when I say couldn't handle it, I don't mean that in a negative, bad way, but we've met people that are excellent in a structured role at a company, but they take their same skill sets and go on their own, they can't function. They have to get back into that. And then you have people like, well, me, that well, I can function in the corporate structure, but I prefer to do what I want to do because, I just want to do it. But anyway, so
I prefer to work alongside corporate structures and not necessarily work in them. So I've worked on projects with Disney and Paramount and Peacock and Apple TV Plus. Those are projects and clients that we've had through the years, even when working with other agencies sometimes, But I have not thought in the past 20-something years about going to work in someone's company, but I definitely like the corporate checks.
Definitely. I mean, that's what it's about some of the times, because the independent money, when you have, we've both been there before, and I'm still there, but I mean, I still freelance for Black Enterprise, but I do get it from that aspect. Now, what made you get into, now, of course, growing up in the Bronx, because of course I grew up in walking distance of Parkchester. It keeps saying my internet connection seems unstable. I don't know why it's doing that, because it never does that. But you can hear me, I can hear you, so I'm still moving, you're still moving. Okay, sorry about that. Since we both lived in the Bronx, of course, we grew up in the throes of hip hop, so I know that we both had that love for hip hop. But what made you go specifically to publicity? Because of course, there's other fields that you could have gone into, or you may have gone into, but landed in publicity.
I didn't know I was going to end up in publicity, said. Honestly, when I was at Howard, I wanted to come out of school and become a radio personality, to sit and talk to people and play music. That was the ultimate job to me, to come out and be a radio personality and just spend my day playing music and talking to people, talking with people. That's what I wanted to do. And when I came out of Howard, there was no job available in radio. I think I lost.
Okay, this has never happened before, and I'm so sorry. Bad connection, and I'm hearing you, and I'm like, okay, don't go out. So let's continue. Sorry, peoples. Y'all know how modern technology is, and I think we're good now. So my apologies. So go ahead, Jackie. Sorry.
Yeah, so I didn't know that I wanted to go into publicity. I didn't know that publicity was going to take over my heart the way it has. I actually initially wanted to be a radio personality. I wanted to be on air, talking to people all day, having conversations, playing music. That was the life for me, And I did a couple of internships in New York. I was at BLS. I was at Kiss FM. And when I was in my junior year at Howard, I was offered a job as the producer of the morning show here at Hot 97. And at that time, Wendy was on air, Kenny Webb, and Jeff Fox were the morning show personalities at that time. And one thing I didn't share about myself when I shared that I grew up in the Bronx is that I am also West African. So my family is from Ghana. You didn't know that, yes. My family is from Ghana. So I have the typical African parents that you hear about. Go become a doctor, a lawyer, something, valid in our culture. And, here I am walking around saying, I want to be a radio personality. That's what I want to do. My mother thought it was crazy, So I get out of school, and my mother, naturally, I'm mentioning an African mother, did not approve of me leaving school to become a producer of some radio station somewhere that she didn't even listen listen to. She was like, get us back to school. And from my perspective, it was like, this is what we go to school for, to come out of school and work at the top #1 station in the country, which at that time was in New York, Kiss FM, you know? So what else do you want from me, you know? But she didn't understand that. She forced me to go to school. I came out of school and Kiss FM had changed its format. You know, at that time, it was the Budweiser Superfest, all the current stuff, and they changed to classic, you know.
Yeah.
And the radio personalities that were there didn't even know if they were going to have a job. So I got a job at a clothing store.
Okay.
And as the type of person I am is I treat everybody the same way. I talk to everybody. I don't, you know, oh, this person is important. Let me get to know them. And I met someone who worked at a record label while I was working at the clothing store. And that's how I ended up in the industry.
Oh, wow.
At some point or another, there was a lady that used to come into the clothing store all the time. She was always in a rush. She was always stressed out. She was always going to an event. And I didn't know she worked in the, you know, in the record industry, you know. I just knew that she came in all the time. And I got to know her. And I was like, what's your size? And I would just grab clothes for her and just hold it. So one day she came into the store and said, what do you want to do? Is this what you really want to do? I said, no, I've been looking for a job at a record label or a radio station or something for a while. And while she was in the dressing room, she passed her card over the dressing room. And she was the vice president of marketing at Atlantic Records. I was like, oh my God, you know, I had no idea that all this time, which the lesson there is to don't treat people based upon who you think they are, or what they just treat people, you know, well, period, you know?
Yeah.
And it turned out that's who she was, and she got me access, you know? And that's how I ended up in the industry. Now, you asked me specifically about publicity. Had no idea what publicity was. I went into the labels working in A&R, Columbia Jazz, and my boss decided that he was going to go work with Columbia Legacy. Now, I'm 22, maybe, and Legacy was the department where everybody was dead, you know?
Yeah.
All catalogs, like great stuff. You know, now that we are older, I can appreciate it, but great stuff. It was the Miles Davis reissues and Sarah Vaughan original tracks remastered, and I didn't want to do that. I was like, I'm not trying to work. I'm not that age yet. To go to the parties, I want to, you know.
You want to dance to Boogie, all of them.
Yes, I wanted to be where things were popping, you know. And luck would have it that there was a job in publicity. I had no idea what publicity was, but there was a job in publicity, and it was working for these two people, Yvette Noel-Schore and Miguel. And my first, so I went there and I did the interview. They liked me, but I still didn't know what publicity was. I went my first day of work that day, and again, I'm aging myself completely, said, but it's okay. My first day of work at Columbia Records was going into the conference room and taking the order of four young teenagers from Houston who were Destiny's Child.
Yep.
I didn't know them as Destiny's Child at the time. You know, they weren't even Destiny's. They're Destiny's Child, but they weren't the Destiny's Child who you know them as, right? Yeah. So four young ladies, beautiful young ladies. I went in there, hi, I'm Yvette's new assistant. Can I get you, you know, ordering food, right? And then they were like, oh, we're, if this person calls, and it was Maxwell calling on the phone. And then it was Kenny Lattimore, and then the Fugees, and Lauryn Hill was coming out with she was recording Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. And then it was the Love Jones soundtrack. And then it was The Brat and JD and all the So Def stuff. It blew my mind. I was in the thick.
You were where you wanted to be.
Of everything at that time. It was amazing. And I learned so much, you know. My first actual project that I was put in charge of was Lord Tariq and Peter Gunz record, Uptown Baby.
The Bronx.
And so that's how I started. That's how I started. That's my entry into the industry.
It's always funny to hear the beginning stories because I don't think any of us, even entertainers, like had the start that they anticipated. Because even with me, when it comes to writing, I never took a journalism class. I had no desire to do anything. But at the time, Tuffy from Video Music Box, we were friends and we had gone to school together. He was on Video Music Box at the time, and we were actually part of a singing group. So it's like
I did not know that. Said you sing?
well, I used to sing.
Wow, I used to too. I was Miss Black Teen New York.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
I was just Cedric Thornton from the Bronx, so I couldn't match you. But fast forward, it's funny because even when I started working in the industry, because I started with Video Music Box as a production assistant for like one video, and Tuffy's sister worked with Ralph McDaniels, Cheryl Cosell, and what ended up happening was now of course everyone knows about me being in MC Lyte's Paper Thin video.
Yes, yes.
That came about because after meeting Ralph and when the video came up, when she was doing the video, because she was like everyone knew Cram to Understand, like she was the next big thing to come up, and then like nobody knew about the second single. And the funny thing is that Tuffy and I were actually very close with Carl Payne, who ended up being Cockroach on the Cosby Show, and
He's from
Cole.
the Bronx too?
No. He lives in Harlem. But
Okay.
we Tuffy and I went to Music and Art, and he went to Performing Arts, and Performing Arts and Music and Art moved in together to form LaGuardia. While we were both there. Yeah. So what ends up happening is that they asked me to be in a video as Carl's friend, and Carl was going to be the person that was
my
boyfriend. What ended up happening is that morning of the video shoot, Carl calls me. He says, "Yo, I'm not going to the video," and I'm like, "Why not?" And he's like, "Now he was on the Cosby Show at the time, so he says." I don't want to be typecast as like another cockroach in a video. And then it turns out, coincidentally, his biggest role on TV was basically Cole from Martin, which was basically the same character of him being cockroach on the Cosby Show. But
Right.
That's another story. So
Right.
when he didn't show up, when I got, and he didn't bother calling them. So I had to tell them. I told Tuffy's sister and Ralph and them that Carl's not going to make it. So they asked me, would I be comfortable being the lead in the video? And I'm like, videos at that time was like movies. It's like there was like videos wasn't what it is today, where
Oh my God.
you can do a video on the phone now. So what ends up happening is that I was like, okay. And that's how I was MC Lyte's boyfriend in her first video, Paper Thin.
Oh my God. And that was a huge single too.
Yeah, it was. And like it was just crazy because, like I said, that was not my intention. But like you said, being in the industry and just being around, like to be in a video at that time, that was monumental. That was like nobody was in videos. So for me to be in a video was like I'm the Michael Jackson of my block because nobody was in the video. Like nobody, So but I say all that to say that, like I said, it's just crazy how we go into it one way, get into something, and then ends up being something. And even with my writing, like I said, we had a singing group, but Barry Wade, who was working at Impact Magazine at the time, I met him through Carew Daniels. And Carew Daniels coincidentally suggested to be a writer.
Oh.
He didn't know if I could write. And it's like I spoke nothing of writing, but his thing was I had relationships with a lot of rappers. And at this time, this is when everyone was getting into hip hop. And One Nut was a magazine called One Nut. It was a small magazine. So he said, I'm gonna introduce you to the editor because this, that, and other. I said, okay, cool. So he contacted me. He's like, I need you to interview this new rapper. And I'm like, okay, who? And he's like, Biggie Smalls. And I'm like, Biggie Smalls? I'm
So
like,
that was your first interview?
Very first interview. Now,
oh my God.
And we're gonna put the focus back on you because, like I said, this is supposed to be about you. But let me finish this story.
This is a conversation. I love this.
But the funny thing is that Mark Pitts, who was managing Biggie, we went to high school together, so I knew Mark Pitts. Puff was we were interns at the same time. He was an intern at Uptown. I was an intern at Motown, and at the time, Motown and Uptown was on the same floor, being distributed by MCA. So I already knew Puff, and I already knew Mark. So when he asked me to interview Biggie, I'm like, wow, it's like. So I called up Mark. I'm like, yo, this I'm writing for this magazine, and they want me to interview Biggie. So like I was like, that was a big thing. And then I spoke to Puff. And the funny thing is that just interviewing Biggie because he was Biggie was a big thing because he was already on the come up. He had already done Party and Bullshit for the Man soundtrack. Who's the Man soundtrack with? So that was my entry into writing. And then from there, I started interviewing my actual friends. Channel Live, Lord Finesse, like just people that I already knew. And like, so when Carew suggested this to me, for me, and at the time I was doing promotions at Motown. So for me, it wasn't about writing. But when I started writing all those things, and like I said, then all of a sudden that I got the writing bug and I started writing other places. Next thing you know, years later, I'm writing for Vibe, I'm writing for The Source, I'm writing for Billboard, I'm writing for Black Enterprise.
That's probably around the time that I met you then, because I was working with the Licks, the Alcoholics.
Yes, the Alcoholics.
I was, who else? I had Prodigy.
Yes.
Solo record. Mafia.
Yep.
Lil Jon, Naughty by Nature. 112.
The heavyweights at the time.
Yeah.
Yep. And I don't know how we actually met, but like you said, then we just started working together because I always say to people, like, you know, just being around, especially during that time where everyone was just out there doing their thing, or at least trying to do their things. And like, you could tell me we met at the 3rd floor of this building, and I'd be like, okay, because I can't remember, but because there was so much going on and everybody's doing so much. And it's like, I loved it back then because everyone was doing something, and you were able to work with somebody for doing anything. And like you said, then when I became a writer, then all of a sudden it opened up, like, and the lucky thing for me is that the assignments I was getting was for people I already knew. So it made it that much easier for me as a writer because I can ask them questions that any other writer would ask them that they wouldn't respond to, or wouldn't answer, or wouldn't give them the answer that they would give me.
Right. And also artists at that time were intentional about being different, you know. Guru was another one of my clients before he passed. I worked with Proof.
Proof, yeah.
Detroit. So quite a few of the people that I have worked with have passed away. Prodigy, Proof, Guru. Believe it or not, I repped Teddy Pendergrass.
Oh, wow.
I was the last publicist to work with him before he passed away as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, quite a bit.
I was going to hire you as a publicist, but not with that track record. No, I'm just joking. I'm really joking.
And the funniest thing and the craziest thing is it's so different now. When I think about it now, I have no pictures with any of them.
Wow.
Because publicity at that time was not about you standing and taking pictures with your clients. You were supposed to be in the background. Your focus was on the client, not on getting your picture real quick. And it was, in fact, very uncomfortable to say to a client, oh, Cormega. I mean, how many years did I work Cormega? Nearly 20, you know? But publicity was about highlighting your client and staying in the background. You know, if you were on a red carpet or somewhere with your client and the camera went on you, you would duck and get out of the way. So I never captured a lot of artists that I represented. You know, Lil Jon. I never took pictures with any of them. It was about work, doing that work with excellence, and that was it. You know, there's something that I could learn from the younger people now, because the younger publicists, they taking pictures with everybody. They're walking on the carpet. They're taking pictures with people who aren't even their clients. You know,
they're taking pictures before the people they're repping.
Exactly. But that's not how we were raised. You know, that's not how we were trained. You see, if you see a picture, I was trained by Yvette and Miguel, right?
Yeah.
So if you see a picture of Yvette, she's standing behind Beyoncé or somewhere. You see her in the background, right? There's very, very few pictures where you see where she's, you know, posing. She's usually working. You know what I mean? So the culture of publicity has changed, you know, because now people are publicizing themselves.
Yes.
So making sure that you see them with their client in some highly visible ways. But it wasn't like that when we first came out, you know?
No. And it's funny you say that, because that was one of the questions I was going to ask you as far as the changes, because it's known. And even though I have a lot of publicists as friends, I tell people I hate publicists. And when they say that, like I said, of course, not the publicists I actually know and are friends with. I'm like, because of the culture of publicity these days, where especially with social media being what it is now and what it has grown into, as you stated, I would actually, if this was 20 years ago, I know I couldn't get this interview with you. Why? I know that. You know, because you would be like, no, it's about my clients. And it's funny because one of the reasons why I reached out to you, I just recently spoke to Tony Ferguson. I spoke to Yvette Harris. So, and I'm purposely reaching out to what I call real publicists that I know that if I had asked even 10 years ago, y'all may have said no, because the focus was always on the client. But I also know that y'all are about what y'all do, and that's why I wanted y'all to get your turn in the spotlight, so to speak, because of the work that you have done. And I know, and because I know that there's been a lot of tips, but I know that publicists go through a lot when it comes to dealing with artists, especially when you're dealing with artists that are on a certain level because of their popularity or because of how many people are trying to get to them. As a human being, and I say human being purposely, how were you and are you able to handle the spoils of your work and working with, you know, like a Teddy Pendergrass or whoever it is that you're working with, but also having to deal with having to maybe reject some publications or some people based on not what you want to do, but based on what your clients need and want and what they're paying you for? Because I've learned over the years that if I can't get an interview with somebody you're repping and we're friends, it's not because you don't want me to get the interview. It's because there's a certain goal that needs to be met, or the client wants certain publications. And I never put myself above anybody I'm working with, because I know that that's a problem with a lot of writers or smaller publications. But I never took it personal. Well, I did initially because I'm big sad. You can't say no to me. But of course, I grew out of that because
let it be sad. Let it be sad.
You know, exactly. So how are you able to like walk that fine line when having to deal, and also dealing with the egos of the people that you work with?
You know, you deal with egos on both sides. You know, you know, with the talent and also these relationships that are sometimes challenging with media people as well. But let me say something about publicists first of all. It's a job. It's a job we do. Some people take themselves a little too seriously. And there have been times when me, you know, like I'm not an industry type person. You know what I mean? Like when I'm not doing what I'm doing, I'm out with my daughter, I'm gardening, I'm, you know, doing my life, you know, and I've never been somebody that's been defined by what I do or defined by who I represented. As I told you that earlier story, the woman that I met in the clothing store I wasn't catering to her because she was social, because she worked in the industry, you know. She was just a woman who came in. It was about service for me, you know. It still is about service for me. She came in, she was always rushed. She, you know, she gave me her number. She said, if you see something, if you find the jacket for this, let me know, you know. So it was about service. Even with my clients now, it's about service, you know. A lot of our publicity, my publicity sisters and brothers make things a lot harder than they need to be. Yeah. And a lot of times it's the power, the middleman, the gatekeeping, that they treat people, you know, in a certain kind of way, you know. I've never been one of those type of persons, you know. Yeah. I've always and the most people that know me, a lot of writers will say, when I was coming out, you were kind to me, you know, or when I first called you, you know, you were accommodating. The times have changed when it changes. So the times have changed when it comes to media. Everybody's looking at the algorithm, the numbers, you know. So as a publicist, you're trying to keep your job. So your clients will say, I don't want to talk to, and sometimes it's the clients, sometimes it's the management. I don't want to do any interviews with any outlets that have less than 50,000 IG followers, because it's an interview that nobody will see, you know. And if they're paying you that money or those monthly funds, they want to see the biggest impact, the biggest result, the biggest audience, and it's not personal. The same way a media outlet will look at my client and say, are they going to draw eyes? You know, do they have enough followers? Do they have a story that my audience is going to care about? Your methods of determining whether that interview has value to your audience, you know. The same thing that the clients are doing on the other side, you know. So when we bring them things, they will weigh them based upon whatever their measurement is. Yeah. How I've gotten around it so that I can take care of people, you know, and get stories told is I mix my days. Like if I'm doing press with them, I'll have a bigger outlet, smaller outlet, bigger outlet, smaller outlet. So they don't feel like they've spent time doing all small outlets all day or all big outlets one day, you know. So if I say, hey, do an interview with Big Said, the industry Cosign, and then they go look at the numbers, I say, hey, that Big Said is the same one that writes for Black Enterprise, okay? Yeah. Just so you know, when you're a restaurant and you want, you know, coverage on that other side, it's the same person, you know, it's the same skill set, it's the same value, you know what I mean? And it's not that one is less than the other, but people have a tendency to go look at the number, you know, and not consider the story, you know. When we look at Shannon, what's his name?
Sharp.
Shannon Sharp. He didn't have big interviews from the beginning, you know.
It grew.
It took one.
One, exactly.
One. And so I tell my clients that too. Don't ever look at somebody like they're too small or the outlet is too this. It just takes one.
Yep.
And then things switch around and now they don't want to give you the time of day. You blew them off, you know. So I try to explain these things, you know, and I ask them to trust me, you know. And sometimes I know certain writers and the way they interview, you know, the types of questions they ask, and I know that outlet will probably get bigger looks because of just the interview, you know, conversation, the things that were revealed in it. So I don't think that what I do is separate from how I do life, you know. Yeah. My mother was the type of person who knew everybody, you know. And when she passed away, the mailman, the cleaner, the person in the cleaners, the person who would be downstairs mopping the floors in our building, everybody knew her. She treated everybody the same. And when she passed, her funeral, 450. Some were very important.
Yeah.
Some, whoever she encountered, every day we encounter people, we give energy every day. You know what I mean? So it's difficult because sometimes the artist will get in their mind when they become bigger that they're too big for this or that, and it's like people rise and people fall. We see an empire crumbling right now.
Yep.
And people remember how that person treated them. Will they come out and help? Will they come out and say something positive? No, everybody's silent. The silence speaks very loudly.
And it's funny you say that because I've always told people that because of like the people that I know and involved with in the industry, that there are times where people have seen people on my site and then they ask me about this person and I hook them up. And that wasn't based on my numbers being this amount. It was based on the fact that my audience might be exactly the audience that you're targeting, because I could write an article on Black Enterprise right now. Black Enterprise definitely has a bigger audience, but the audience might not be feeling who you are based because they may not know you or they don't have an interest. But the people that come to my site, they know what they come into the site for, and then you can get and like it's happened before. And it's like, I'm not saying it to brag, but there have been people, there have been specifically artists that have been featured on my site that was actually then went on to Vibe and other sites because of my relations with people, and they see it on my site, and it's like, okay, leave it alone. So I get it in that aspect, but I also, like I said, I get it when people may put me on a back burner until they actually need me, because there's been times where you have these artists that, I mean, I can't front, and I'm going to always brag about this. There's a lot of artists that I featured on industry cosign when nobody knew who they were, that became platinum artists, that became big movie stars and things of that nature. And I still have a relationship with some of them, but the good thing is that they acknowledge that they got their start with me, or that like, and there were times when I want to flex my muscle, but I'm like, why do I need to when I'm just still trying to do what I do? And like you said, the next interview I do might put me on a level where I'm not going to be viewed in this way anymore. Now, my thing is, I don't want to be viewed in any way but how you want to view me, because my thing isn't for the thing. This is something that I've wanted to do. The site is 21 years old. I've been doing it because I wanted to do it.
Right.
Like, I've made money from my site, but not a lot. Whereas, like, but this is my site. I can do what I want, and I appreciate when people contact me to do things with my site as opposed to who I'm connected with. Yeah, I have people that want to connect with me because I freelance for Black Enterprise, but I'm at a point now where I don't have the freedom I had for years. I can't do more. Like, I have to get it, okayed, and if it's not okayed, or if I get a response, it might not be. So it's like, now there are those people that I know that still are like, yo, I'm fucking with the industry cosign. If you can give me a Black Enterprise, I'm cool with that, but I'm fucking with the industry cosign.
It's all about relationships. Just like you said, my friends are better than yours. It really is about relationships. Yeah. But it is also about just treating people with respect. Period. Now, there are some people that I don't deal with because they were disrespectful, to either myself or to a client, and for me, it's about character, integrity, Definitely. And if in character integrity is in question, then I cannot. You know what I mean? Character and integrity. If I have to question it, I won't. Yeah. I won't deal with you, So people do some shady things sometimes, and I don't get caught up in the industry, If you met me, you didn't know what I do, you wouldn't know.
Yeah.
You understand? The other day I was, somebody who I know that is a member of an organization that I'm in, and she doesn't know what I do. And that day I was working with Tina Knowles on her book tour. She happened to be there and she saw me, and I had a staff, thing because I was working for Shore Media that day. And she goes, wait a minute. Never really speaks to me ever, You working with Tina Knowles? And I was like, yeah, today I am. And she was like, wait, what do you do? And since then, she's been different. You understand? She's been different. And I'm not like that. You know what I'm saying? I'm not like that. I like I said, when I met this woman in the clothing store, I didn't know where she worked, I didn't know anything about her. And that comes from my mom. My mom knew everybody. And it didn't matter who they were affiliated with. Was this person bigger than this person? I used to get so mad when I was little because everywhere we went, she had to stop and talk to everyone. Don't go to church with her. Church was already 2 hours long. After you get up, do you know, Jackie, this is my daughter. And it would be about 50 people. Like, listen, ma'am.
We got to go.
We got to go. I got cartoons to watch or whatever. She's talking to everybody. But when she passed, I saw how many people. I'm walking down the street, since we look alike. They're like, is your mom Evelyn Parker? I'm so sorry. I'm like, who are these people? She'd go to Macy's and sit in Macy's for the air conditioning. And people would walk by and they would sit down and talk to her. And, so I've got a little bit of that with me, And so I just talk to people and I get to know people. And then later on, somebody will come and tap me on the shoulder and say, do you know who you were talking to? And I'm like, no, I didn't. Who is that? Oh, that was the CEO or such as. I'm like, oh, okay, that's nice. Then I keep it moving, But people get caught up in this industry, the VP, the such and such head of such and such. I've never been into that, When Loud Records closed as a merged into Sony, and I got my first project was as an independent publicist, was working Lil Jon and the East Side Boyz.
Yeah.
And it was when they put the single out, Put Your Hood Up and B.I.B.I. Now, if you remember when that song came out, the South was not doing anything in New York. So it was hard to pitch Southern hip hop to New York writers, New York editors who were like, put your hood up, put your hood up, put your click up, represent your, where are the lyrics? This is not like or Tribe Called Quest. Like, there's no lyrics here. There's just chanting and a beat. Like, what is this? And the funny thing is, how I was able to be successful with that project is we brought writers to Atlanta. That's when labels would actually pay, to fly writers out, because you got to see people in their environment sometimes, Them being in New York, coming to New York, it's not the same. But when writers and editors came to Atlanta, it was a different story. You understand? They got to see the culture. They got to be in the club and see how the records were hitting. They got to see the audience, how they were partying the things, That's not something that's not you said, So I said, we got to get people, we have to take a select number of writers and take them to Atlanta so they can see what's going on there. Because there's something going on in the South that we in New York don't know nothing about, But that was my first independent project. And I don't remember you being in the room, but I cried. I stood in front of a room of journalists and cried. And I'm still emotional about it now. But coming from working at Columbia, coming from working at Loud, coming to working at Priority, this was the first time that I was calling people without any label attached to my name.
Yeah.
And the label that Lil Jon was on at that time was TVT Records, independent label.
Yeah. Yep.
And I called people and they came. And it was Southern hip hop we're not into. And I walked into the, room, like people didn't RSVP, they just came. I walked into the room and I saw everybody. Everybody was there. And I was just like, I just stood there and I froze. I was just like this. And I'm looking around and I just started crying. I was in tears, bawl, that I could stand on my own without being Jackie from Columbia or Jackie from, wherever. And to see my writer friends take the time out of their day to say, let's go support Jackie. We don't know nothing about this little character. We don't know anything about this Lil Jon or this artist. She's because like I said, the South was not hitting at that time. Was it 95, 96, something, something around there. Outkast was just coming out. Usher was still a little young. So, I mean, it just wasn't happening. BET wasn't playing any Southern hip hop. Lil Jon went and sat in the audience at 106 and Park because he said, I'm just going to go, just give me a seat in the audience. And he has such a big personality, and, they finally saw him. And it's so interesting for me now to be living in Atlanta. And seeing how the South has just taken over. You understand what I'm saying? And to have been a part of that, But it goes back to what we were talking about the ego, and about being the type of person who just be kind. Just be kind. Yeah. Don't be nasty to people. Treat people right. That's what helped me when I started in my company. Because I didn't know what I was going to do after Loud folded into Sony. And it's interesting. I was talking to a publicist. If you remember her, Patty Webster.
Of course, I love Patty.
So Patty was working some projects that we were working at that time. And I got laid off. I was in LA when the announcement came out that, Loud was folding into Sony and closing, whatever. And I'm sitting there. I was with someone from The Source, and we were doing a cover story for the Alcoholics. And I found out because the story came out in the Daily News. Like, we didn't even know. My colleague, Brian Gilmore.
Called,
yeah. Miguel called me and said, you heard? And I was like, what? He said, we about to not have jobs, right? That's how I found out. I went and sat on top of this mountain and I told the writer, I said, hey, every time I come to LA, I never see LA. Take me somewhere where I can just clear my head. So he took me up to this mountain where you could see everything in LA, and I'm sitting there and just something spoke to me spiritually and said, you're going to be okay. Don't worry about it. And I had been doing some weird things, weird things like preparing myself and not knowing I was preparing myself. Yeah. When I was working for the label, I bought a computer, laptop for home. I bought a printer for home. I bought all these things for home because I was working so late at the office. Maybe I can just buy these things and do them at home. And everything was in its, hadn't opened anything. I had a home office without even really, So when I was working at the label, I kept buying things for my office, And the idea was I was going to build an office at home so I could come home from working at the label and, just continue doing my work. I got laid off. I called Patty, and Patty was like, what do you want to do? I said, I don't want to go work for nobody. I put in too much, I want to have more control over the projects that I take, over my life, over, I just want to have more control, And she was an independent publicist.
Yeah.
she was talking to someone and she said, hold on 1 second, I got a call. I'm on hold. She comes back, she goes, this label, TBT, they keep calling me about this artist, some little G-side boys out in Atlanta. And Patty was a pastor, you know? So she's like, I can't work no Southern hit. I can't work no.
That's not a Patty project.
That's not a Patty project. A Patty LaBelle is, you know?
Yeah.
But they were calling her about that. And the funny thing is, you know, I believe in God and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So the funny thing is that when I was working at Loud and it was all the Southern hip hop stuff, I did not want to work the Southern hip hop stuff because I was a New York hip hop head.
That makes sense.
And they said, you are going to work 3 6 Mafia. Get on that plane and go to Memphis and meet 3 6 Mafia. So I went. And then I got in the taxi. And this is goes to show you, this is going back to what I was saying earlier, where I said sometimes you have to be someplace else. You cannot sit and analyze something happening, a culture somewhere else. You have to go. And I'm sitting in the taxi and I heard back to back to back to back 3 6 Mafia. It wasn't 3 6 Mafia, it was Crunchy Black. It was, what was her name? The female MC who died recently.
Oh man. Oh, I forgot her name.
You know who I'm talking about.
I know you're about, yeah.
Yeah. So they were playing their music back to back, and I'm like saying to the taxi driver, like, is this a CD? He's like, no, this is a radio. I said, they play that all day here? He said, yes, ma'am, this is our music. Now, if I had not taken that 3 6 Mafia, if I had not been put on that 3 6 Mafia project when I was with Loud Records, that's what got me to know the Southern market.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do Project Pat, Chicken Head, all of that stuff. I did not want to work the Southern market because I didn't understand it. But after I went to Memphis and I went to a club in Memphis with 3 6 Mafia and their clique, the stage that they were on, I thought it was going to break because people party different in the South, you know? And no, we in New York, we just bounce our head, you know?
We too cool. We too cool.
In the South, it was crazy. You know what I mean? So I came back to New York with this new energy, you know, around Southern hip hop. But I say that to say that had I not worked that project, my own independent publicity company probably would not have worked, you know, because when Patty clicked over, she said, they're looking for someone who works or knows Southern hip hop. Because they have some artists out of Atlanta, one of them being this Lil Jon and Eastside Boys that they're looking for publicity for. By that time, I'd already worked 3 6 Mafia and Project Pat. Yeah. So it made sense for her to recommend me. So those were my first 2 clients for my company, and I went independent. I continued to work music until 2009. My daughter, I had a baby. Somehow in the middle of all this work, I had some interactions and I had a baby.
Interactions.
Interactions, situationships, right?
In the South at that?
No, in New York.
Oh, okay.
In New York and moved to the South, right?
Gotcha.
And when I moved, I decided I did not want to do the same thing I'd been doing before. I wanted to spread myself as a publicist. Because if you're really a publicist and you're a good publicist, you can work anything. It's not just entertainment. It's knowing how to tell a story. It's knowing how to pitch, having relationships. So I changed. What did I go do? I went to work Beauty and the Beast for Disney. I went to go work The Birth of a Nation. The documentary, that was a James Baldwin documentary. No, that was The Birth of a Nation. I Am Not Your Negro was the James Baldwin documentary. I went to work The Birth of a Nation. That one was the Slave movie. Nate Parker. So yeah, I went to go do a lot of film, you know, and it's so funny because when I did music, when I did hip hop, and I went to do R&B with 112 and Take Pendergrass, the people who knew you're going to look at my career based upon what I'm doing at that time. So I started out doing a lot of hip hop. Then people said, "Do you do R&B?" Turned around, started working a lot of R&B. Then people said, "Hey, do you do hip hop?" Like, I've done all of that hip hop in the past, you know? Now I'm working R&B. Somebody came to me and said, "Do you do film?" I went to go do film. Then the people who knew me now for film were now asking me, do I do music? Like, I have done so much, but it's in different places, right? So now I'm doing film. And then somebody came to me and said, "Do you do faith-based stuff?" Then I was for 4 years, you know, doing all the gospel and CHH, right? Now I'm working the gospel and CHH arena. People asking me, "Do you do secular hip hop?" I'm like, you have no idea, like all the stuff. Right. So people know you for what they know you for. You know, if I'm working a book, then people go, "Oh, you do books. Do you do movies?" So like whatever you are working on, you attract more of it.
Yeah.
You know, so if you're working on hip hop, people recommend you only for hip hop projects. You know, if you're working on scary movies, people go, "Oh yeah, she does scary movies." And that's the way, you know, people are with publicists. I believe that when you're able to tell a story and you're a really good publicist, you know how to tell that story. You know what I mean? So because of that, I've moved around in different, you know, places. So right now I'm working film. I'm working a documentary called Time 2. The first time was nominated for a Grammy, an Oscar, excuse me. It was an Oscar nomination for the first time that came out in 2020. I recently was part of the team working the Fight Night series. Everybody knows that series. And then I also worked the several projects for Apple TV. And then also the Fresh Prince reboot, Bel-Air.
Bel-Air.
Yeah. So I'm doing a mixture of music and film now because I'm tired of people asking me, "Do I do this and do I do that?" So now I'm trying to just mix it up, you know, keep 1 or 2 clients in music, 1 or 2 clients in film, and author. And I'm about to start working something in finance.
Oh, wow. So let me ask you a question. As far as music, film, Broadway, whatever, when it comes to journalists or writers and content creators nowadays, like, is it a different mindset? I know what you do, and like you said, the story you have to tell, you know, you can create, but the delivery in order to get the publications to actually want to publish it, is one genre more accepting? Is it basically the same but different codings? I mean, like, is there a difference?
Is there a difference between film, TV?
Well, I mean, as far as the acceptance, because in music, I'm 99% sure you have a lot of knuckleheads on both ends of the spectrum, whether they're writers or whatever. But I'm wondering, like, is it the same? Not the same in that aspect, but is it a different mindset when you're pitching, and the mindset of them either accepting or even when they're rejecting? Like, do you have to change the mindset behind the way you pitch based on it being a different field? I think I said that correctly in the way I want to.
No, the story is the story.
Okay, yeah. So that's what that's what I was
saying. The story is figuring out how this product or thing is either impacting, influencing someone. Okay, so it's not a difference in how I do it, but there is a difference for you in the way you receive it.
Yeah.
So if I'm working fight night with stars, like it's an all cast, Samuel Jackson, and it's an all-star cast, Taraji P. Henson, you receive it differently.
Yeah, but that's an easier sell than
character. You receive it differently because you are already familiar with those, the stars of that particular series. You're talking about Chloe Bailey, Samuel Jackson, Kevin Hart, Taraji, Terrence Howard. If I call you about something like that, it's a no-brainer for you, right?
Okay, tell me more. Tell me more.
Tell me more. But then if I call you about an independent documentary, you receive it differently. I'm still telling the same story.
Yeah.
What are the angles? What are the stories? What are the bullets? What is this writer, playwright, showrunner trying to communicate? I'm still telling you the same story. Said you may decide to call me back faster because, oh my God, I've been trying to get, such and such for the long years. I can get them, this film, But what is difficult about doing film, I'm going to tell you, and I hope that I don't get in trouble for this. A lot of the actors are not represented by people that look like us. And that is a choice that the actors make when they're looking at their representation. They choose people who don't look like us. And I'm not saying that you have to be culturally connected to understand certain things, but sometimes that can be a hindrance.
Yeah.
Because if that person is not familiar with the industry cosign, they will blow it off.
Yeah.
They will only deal with those media outlets that they're on their checklist, whether it is the Essence, the Ebony, whatever the mainstream culture sees as valuable. Yeah. So they put those things in front of the talent, A lot of times they're not managed by people who are, so it's just different dynamics. So it makes it harder. So sometimes, you may, or a writer may say, oh, you come to me for the independent stuff, but you don't come to me, Sometimes I can't get them to do it. I always submit everything, submit all the requests, and the talent or the manager, will sometimes say, no, decline, pass. But I still have to maintain that relationship with you.
Yeah.
And that's difficult, But then you have somebody like a Halle Berry who's on a red carpet and they're pulling her and saying, let's go. Because all they do is rush the people down the carpet to make them go sit in their seats and wait, right? She comes back. She goes, no, let me go talk to this person. No, I need to talk to my people.
Yeah.
We need more talent that's going to be like that, but a lot of times they are not.
And that's one of my beats when it comes to like, you'll have some of these same people who, when they're on the high, don't care about, the smaller publications that are Black centric, but the minute that white media is not really dealing with them and they have something coming out, then all of a sudden they're rushing to get to the smaller Black media. And it's like, I mean, I've had those situations many times, and it's like, it always depends on my mood. That's a good thing about what I do. I do what I want. So it's like
there's so many things in the background going on, that we as publicists don't always get to share, and so perception is oh, she's blocking, and sometimes there is that. I've had some of our publicists act funny for an event that I was having, and they don't want their client. I mean, people get I was watching something yesterday with Doechii, and the Met Gala, and I was thinking to myself, my God, the Met Gala raised $31 million. You know, and this year it was mostly us, you know, brown people. And I just thinking about, because I went to an HBCU, I went to Howard, thinking about how it would have impacted a Negro College Fund or some sort of organization like that, if we could raise that kind of money, you know, for our, you know, purposes, you know, but because we value something, the Met Gala over that, we don't support our own stuff in that kind of same way, you know. So
yep. But that's
that's not just the industry. That's just in general.
In general.
You know, since we came from segregation into integration, we've thrown away some of our own, you know, the value of our own businesses and supporting each other in that kind of way. It's all about getting to the other side because there's more money on the other side.
And I'm gonna tell you something that, like, since you brought up Patty earlier, I can't remember how I met Patty, but we had a good relationship. And whenever she did, actually, she did. There was something that was an Oprah situation that she invited me to, and you had like you had all these big magazines there, and she specifically said, "This is Big Said from the industry Cosign. I wanted you to meet him. This is that and the other." And I've had publicists that, even though their client may not want to do anything, they will still invite me to like a function, whatever, an introduction. Like, I don't know if it's like to thank me or just to put me in certain rooms. And I tell people that we need more of that. Now, it doesn't have to be me specifically, but and that's the reason why I have relationships with some of these publicists where even when they're contacting me, knowing that I write for Black Enterprise, they're not asking me for Black Enterprise. That makes me feel good because Black Enterprise is definitely bigger than the industry Cosign, but the relationship, because there are many publicists who are literally on top now that I was dealing with when they first started. So the fact that it was like, you know what, this person is not really for the industry Cosign, but I want you to come to this event because this is that and other. Actually, I had an incident when I worked at Black Enterprise like 3 times, like about 10 years ago, where the editor gets mad at me because they invited me to an event that she wanted to go to. And when she found out I was there, she gets mad at me because I was invited. And I'm like, just because people are inviting me because of my relationship with them, and my thing has always been, when I worked at the Source, I always told my interns, never be so-and-so from the Source. Be who you are. I'm Big Said wherever I am, whatever publication I write for. If I develop that relationship as Big Said, they're going to always remember, because if Big Said goes to McDonald's, they're going to be like, well, Big Said's at McDonald's, we need to do something at McDonald's. If Big Said is at Rolling Stone, of course, it's easier. But if I say I'm Big Said from the Source, and then the Source gets rid of me, guess what? Who am I?
There's no value no more, right?
And people
I was saying before when I was talking about the Lil Jon listening session.
Yeah.
To look up in the room and see all the people there. I think that is very important. What you just said is very important to have and know your own brand, you know. But like, people remember when you treat them badly, you know. I have been on red carpets before where my client was rushed and I could not get them to where they needed to be. It just happens, you know. They will come and tap the publicist on the shoulder and say, we need Big Said to keep moving and go to a seat. But what I have done is I've come back to the carpet and I've gotten the contacts for those journalists who were there and said, you know, I'm sorry I wasn't able to do it here. However, I will, you know, give me your cell number, I'm walking up to them with my little pad, you know, give me a cell phone number, give me whatever. And they really appreciated that, you know. That, you know, after I got my client seated, I came back and I said, hey, give me your contact. So what I'm going to do is when I get the opportunity, I'm going to make all of these interviews happen. If you can do them, if you can be flexible and do them via Zoom or by phone, I will still give you access to that person. And so what I did is I had my whole list, and I got home, I sent them a thank you, you know, hey, didn't get to what I want to make sure you have my contact, you know. And as soon as I can make this happen, that made a lot of differences to people.
Definitely.
And they're like, I remember when you did that. It was just like other people just walked away from us, and some of these people have gone on to be at big outlets, and they always, I remember when you did that,
Yep.
and then that's what I did, and if the artist said, well, I don't want to do them because I don't know them, I'm like, okay, well, I slide them into the Rolling Stone interview. Okay, you're gonna talk to Rolling Stone today at 3, and at 3:30 I got industry cosign for you, and then after that we're gonna do Vibe, and then I just layer them the day, so that they still feel like they got some sort of big impact. They still got big outlets, and it doesn't for them, not for me, but for them, it doesn't feel like I just gave them a whole day of smaller things that they don't have any value, they don't have any value for. I always have a value for it all, because you cannot talk to people and then this person has 15,000, whatever, followers or whatever.
Yeah.
And their interview can be the best interview and everybody will pick up the content from it, so.
And that's another thing. What I always tell people that when I started industry cosign, I hadn't worked at Vibe. I hadn't worked at The Source. I hadn't worked at Billboard. So like when I did the industry cosign because of what I was doing, those every publication I've ever written for reached out to me. They reach out to me because whether it's for whatever reason, they still reach out to me. So now all of a sudden, like you didn't want to mess with me because I was the industry cosign. Now that I'm with Vibe, now you see me as somebody that you needed to talk to. And it's like, and like I said, I get it, but there are times where you can be like, well, I always tell people sometimes it's the mindset behind the rejection, because it's like I said, I'm understanding. Whereas if I speak to somebody that's like, well, I had somebody that actually told me that my site wasn't big enough, but literally a year later, they couldn't get publicity, and they were doing sites that couldn't even touch the industry cosign. Their whole monthly views couldn't touch a day of the industry cosign. And it was ironic where they ran into me again, and I saw some of the publications, and I'm like, I'm looking at them, and the look I gave them, they knew, like, and everyone knows me. I don't bite my tongue, but I held my tongue, looked at them like, yeah, I wasn't big enough for you, but yet you're doing magazines that 10 of them together couldn't get views in 1 day. I mean, in 1 month that I get in a day. And now all of a sudden, it's like, you can't have that mindset. I was like, if you don't want to, even if you have to lie to me, but don't make it seem as if like I'm too small or I'm not good enough for you, because guess what? Tomorrow, Rolling Stone could hire me. The next day, MTV might have me as a consultant or as a contributor. So it's like sometimes it's the approach and how you do people. And I have a great memory. But I'm pretty sure there's people that looked at me because I've rejected them, for whatever reasons. But I always tell people that I try to be honest when I do, because I'd rather you tell me no than to ignore me.
Yeah.
And
That's hard.
It is hard, but I've also had to learn from a publicist that told me, just like, I'm reaching out to you, you're not responding. Like, I have a job to do. And I'm like, I agree and I understand that, but I also get 300 emails a day from people like you. So if I'm spending my time responding to everyone that's pitching me, I'm never going to do my job. So it's got to be weighed in the fact that the emails I do get to, that I do acknowledge, I tell people are probably emails that I need to or that I'm supposed to, because because I get too many emails. Even to this day, I still get too many emails.
Yeah.
And it's like,
it's tough, but you know what? I'm just going to give you the perspective from the publicist, right? So every week we get on a call with a client, and every week they ask us the same thing. And every week we say, yeah, I've called him. I didn't get a response. And what happens after a while is they decide that if you can't get it done, then next month we're not going to continue because I came to you wanting industry cosign, and you keep coming to me every week when you give your weekly report in writing and tell me you still have not spoken to Big Sam, which to me means you don't have a relationship with him, right? Which is not true.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's just that you may have, 300 emails in your bin, and we also have to remember that different people communicate in different ways. Some people are not email people. They prefer for you to DM them. Some people are, if you have their cell phone to call them on their cell, So we as publicists are dealing with so many different personalities of dynamics of how, and also sometimes writers wake up and they want to be contacted. They, you'll email them, they won't respond, and then they will say okay, Black Panther, perfect example. When I was working Black Panther, I may have emailed somebody, they didn't respond. Now, the day of the screening, when I've submitted all my names and everything's in, and there's a checklist or whatever, then they're cursing me out because they didn't get invited to the Black Panther screening. And I'm like, forward, Big said, April 16th, 8:03 p.m. Did you respond?
I got receipts.
Forward, Big said, 7:45 text message and phone call. Did you respond? So now you're upset. Well, Black Panther you wanted to be at, or your Sinners you wanted to be at, but you didn't respond. Oh, you decided to unsubscribe from my mail, from my email blast list. So then you didn't get the notification. So now you're calling me and saying, I never get invited to your stuff. And I'm like, oh, let's go see how many of the emails you've opened. And all of them have been unopened, So people, you know what I mean? Yep. And it is always difficult. It is also difficult for a writer when their editor has told them to contact a publicist about a story that needs to be written, and the publicist is not responding. You know what I mean? And they're on deadline, or the writer has said, okay, I did the story, it's supposed to run on Thursday. I need images, I need photos, I need, and it's all we are communications, so it's difficult. It is just difficult, and it is overwhelming. I've been on your side where I've been booking a podcast, and no matter how many times I've written the description of what the podcast is and what about, people are pitching me stuff like, do you see? It's a faith-based podcast and you want to book the cast of Pose on the faith-based podcast? Like, the publicist is not even reading or thinking, Like, okay, it's a teen publication and you're asking me if we can book somebody that doesn't speak to a teen audience. Like, so there's just a whole lot, people are just responding and let me get my client in this. And now, since I've done both sides, I find I'm like, okay, this is a conservative faith-based outlet. They're not going to book any cast members from Pose. It's not a show that their audience is watching. This is an evangelical audience.
Or at least
you understand what I'm saying? So, it's all sorts of stuff. Yeah. We're not listening. We're not paying attention, and it's difficult on both sides, So we go through that as publicists. It is so hard when you have a weekly. I'm going to change it around. Say not so hard. It is so amazing, the experience when you're able to get on a call with your client and tell them that you've secured stuff that they didn't have last week, when you've got their press day nice and pretty and locked in, and they're like, yeah, that's my publicist is working, But when they're not getting that, then they feel like you're not working and you lose clients. And it's not even that you're not working. It's just that you don't have anything new to share with them because you guys get so much, when I was doing some booking, was getting so much. And I'm like, dang, I got to sit here and respond to each and every one of these people and tell them why this stuff doesn't make sense. But I did it. And even if it would have me up at 2 o'clock in the morning, I did it because that's the way I want to be treated. So that person will go to their client and say, I did get a response from Jackie, and here's what she said.
Yeah, because I had an event that I was supposed to go to last night, but after writing, and then I had I also did another podcast yesterday, and by the time I looked, the event started at 5:30, and it was 5 o'clock, and I'm at home, not even taking a shower. I'm like, and I felt bad because, well, there was free food and drinks, so that's definitely a draw. But getting caught up. But the good thing is that I got caught up in work, so it's not as if like I was being lazy or I was just being, ignorant, whatever. But I still felt bad. Like when I reached out to them, they was like, "You still could have come," but I'm like, "Yeah, but you don't understand. I live in Jersey. The event was in Manhattan. Then I had to take a shower. Then I'm like, the event 5:30 to 8:30. I got there 7:48. That wouldn't have made sense. So it's like
now add that to having a child. I got to pick up my child from school. They got food. I've got to then drive to whatever, and then they're going to charge me $25 for valet. My babysitter's charged. My daughter's old enough, 16 now, but I'm talking about when she was little. Yeah. Sometimes I wouldn't go anything because it's cost prohibitive. It's like, okay, I got to get a babysitter for such and such amount of money an hour. I've got to order some food for her to eat because I've been working all day and I didn't get a chance to cook. Then I've got to drive. Most likely my tank is on E, so I got to get gas. Then I get to your location and you're talking about a $25 valet. I come into the club and it's $15 per drink. Because the only drinks that you're serving between 8 and 9. After that is cash bar. Yeah. Now I gotta buy a drink, So sometimes you just don't go, when it becomes the great thing is said that we're in a time right now where we can use AI and all these tools, and you can put the recording there and then the AI is going to transcribe the whole, Q&A, and so we just use the tools and it makes it better.
Yeah, I'm still scared of AI because I've seen the Terminator and I've seen iRobot and things of that nature.
Yes, it is scary.
But luckily I have, and I just found this out a couple of months ago, being an Apple, iMac, iPad, iPhone, now any conversation you have, they actually automatically transcribe it now, which is great for me as a writer, where I'm like, when I found it out, I'm like, beautiful, because it makes my job a lot easier, because even if they get a couple of words wrong, I can still go back and listen, like, okay, then rewrite it. But it's still better than 15 years ago where I had to tape record, physically go back and this, and then write and then go back. Oh my God, I don't know how I survived it back then. I really don't.
And after you did all of that, then the talent who is being interviewed says, "I didn't say that to said." Calls the publicist and says, "You need to take that out of the article because I never said that."
I'm glad I never had that. They only have one situation, and I refused to take it down because it was T.I. when he first started Atlantic Records. He did the interview. He gave like 2-word answers, and I'm looking at him like, "Okay, that's all. I'm finished." He's like, "Okay, I'm done." I said, "Okay." I posted exactly how he did it. The publicist like, "Oh, they want you to take it down," because I'm like, "No." Because I asked him twice, was he okay with the responses? And he gave that little snarky attitude. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. But I ended up taking it down because of my relationship with her. But I left it up for like 2 days because I'm like, no, if you're going to, and like, for me, it was a lesson to him. Like, if you're going to do, take your job serious. Yeah, I might be the industry code, so I might not be Vibe or the source, but you're going to take me serious because I do have an audience too. And then they hit me back, and I'm like, that's the only interview. No one's ever asked me to retract.
So did you end up doing that interview?
Yeah.
Okay.
But like I said,
what was your favorite? See, this is my radio personality switch right here. Like, what was your favorite interview that you've ever done?
I would have to say offhand, I did an interview with Ludacris, and the reason why I consider that my favorite is because I was the first interview of the day. Now, I either try to do the first or the last, depending on the schedule, because one, I've left interviews because they're an hour behind. I'm like, no, I'm not waiting for anybody. I don't care for what. When I got to the interview at Def Jam, not only was he was there early, he was eating lunch. He offered me lunch. He offered to get me lunch. And he was so like the name of his album was Southern Hospitality, and that's exactly what it was from him. And during the interview, I felt so comfortable with him where I felt that we were actually friends. I mean, I already knew Shaka because, like, being from New York, I already knew a couple of people, and there's people at Def Jam. So, but he made me feel so like comfortable. And I've always been the type, even to this day, where I don't care about who I'm interviewing because it's still transactional. You want my coverage, I want to cover you. So I've seen too many writers put them on a pedestal, treat them like this, like, no, you're going to respect me as much as I respect you. If you don't respect me, I'm not going to respect you. So it was a party that night. And he was there. There was a couple people, a lot of celebrities there. And I'm walking through the crowd and I saw him, but I'm like we're cool because we met one time. I've never been, I never will be. He looks at me like, you just go walk by and not speak to me? And I'm looking at him like, yo.
You remember?
Yeah. And I said, listen, I was your first interview. You probably had like 90 interviews that day. He said, nah, you were one of my best interviews, this, that, and other. And I was like, yo, that made me feel good because, like I said, I didn't walk in there as like as a fan. I was always a fan of his and his music. But the fact that he treated me like a person, and that's just like whenever I've been asked that question before, I'm like, he always comes to mind because he was the first one outside of the people that I already knew. Because like I said, I've interviewed a lot of people that I already know, so we already had the rapport. But the fact that like I might see him today, he might remember, not Lisa. But the fact that he treated me like he asked me if I wanted lunch, and then he was on time. We started the interview early because I'm like, no, I don't want to. He said, no, you're here. I want to make sure that you're good. And then seeing me 7 hours later and then like saying what's up. And I'm like, yo. And it wasn't because of my relationship with Shaka or any other Def Jam people. Because like I said, you can tell sometimes. Like I said, when he saw me, he's like, yo, you're not, I'm like, oh. And it wasn't like I was recognizable. But I guess I was recognizable because he did speak. So that was like my favorite. That was like probably my favorite. Outside, like I said, my favorite interviews are usually with people that I already know because, like, I interviewed Tretch a couple of weeks ago, and I've known Tretch since like Naughty by Nature came out, and to this day, and I always say to his friends, I'm like, I bet you Tretch doesn't know my name, but every time he sees me, he calls me the OG. He always acknowledges me.
OG.
He definitely knows who I am. But I'm like, I bet you if somebody says Big Said, he might be like, I don't know. And every time I see him, I always say that I'm going to ask, what's my name? But when I spoke to him a couple of weeks ago, he said, oh, yeah, come on, man. Me and you, so we did the interview. Like I said, it was a good interview. But it's funny because, like I said, the ones that usually stand out, like I interviewed, Special Ed was one of the first ones I did for My Friends Are Better Than Yours. And coincidentally, actually today's his birthday. Happy birthday, Special Ed. I interviewed him on my birthday because when I do the interviews, as you already know, I leave it up to you to what your schedule allows. So he picked my birthday. I was like, you know what? I could take an hour out to speak to him. And like, it was one of the best interviews because like one, it back and forth was just like, if people didn't know, like people knew that we knew each other because we kept going back and forth with the jokes. And it just felt like a regular conversation. And it felt good. And at the time, it was one of my, most viewed interviews because, of course, the Special Ed. And more recently, I interviewed Nia Long and Lorenz Tate. In December.
Wow. Okay.
But
together or separately?
No, together. But on Zoom. Now,
go look at that interview. I have to go on for industry cosign.
I'm about to say, yeah, it's on this.
I gotta go look at that.
I'm about to say, I'll even send you the clip, or you can go to my YouTube page and you see it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is why this became one of my favorites, if not my favorite interview. I've always loved Nia Long, and if it was any other situation, I probably would have attacked her. You know, not in any way that's illegal, people. Though I don't want anybody saying said is going to do this, or if she happens to see this, she gonna have to send her bodyguards after me. Within 2 minutes, she says, "You have pretty teeth." Yo, I was like my smile told it all. Lorenz said, "Yo, sad. You don't realize Nia giving you a compliment," and I'm sitting there literally like this. I'm smiling. I'm like, let's get down to business because and it was
and she's so beautiful.
Yes, and it was such a moment where people that saw the interview was like, "Yo, did you get her number?" I'm like, one, it was inappropriate to do it at the time. Plus, we're on Zoom. I'm like, and it's like, "Yo, but you got to take it." I'm like, "You're right, but I don't want to be the guy that." I'm like, "I don't want." It's like, "Yeah, but she complimented you. You didn't like," and I was like, "Yeah, but," I'm like, "I still got to be professional." I said, "But if I ever run into her, I'm going to remind her. I'm going to keep it on my phone. Remember this?" No, let me stop. But but that made my complete year. As a matter of fact, I haven't stopped smiling since then. And anytime I see one of her posts on Instagram, I'm tempted to be like, "You remember me?" But I can't. But I can't be that guy because she's gonna be like, "Nigga, who the fuck are you? Like, why are you?" And But when you see the clip, you'll understand because it came out of nowhere. She was like, "Oh, you have pretty teeth," and I was like, "A compliment from Nia Long?" I'm like,
yeah, it's just always good when people in this industry are real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they deal with the person they're talking with or interacting with like they're a real person. We all love a compliment, or just when it comes from someone who you find so attractive, But
Nia Long.
I mean, there's just certain human things that we all want. You know what I mean? And one of them is to be treated with respect. But sometimes it seems like when people get bigger and bigger and bigger, people get afraid to deal with them in a human type of way. Like yesterday, I was watching something, and I really like this new artist Doechii.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that she's able to maintain.
Don't mind like. I mean, I'm going down because I have a low battery. I didn't realize that my thing was unplugged, so I'm trying to plug it in. I'm trying to plug it so we don't get cut off. But go ahead.
I'm just hoping that people allow her to continue being who she is, and that things don't change too much.
Yeah, that's true because this industry will spit you up.
All right.
Okay, let me make sure because, like I said, it's like low battery. I'm like, what do you mean low battery?
It really will.
I didn't want us to get cut off because my dumbass didn't realize that
I'm praying for Justin Bieber right now. It's just, especially when you come in the industry young. You know what I mean? Man.
And to go through so much and still not be at a place where you feel comfortable. Yeah, it's just sad. And as you and I both know, like the people that are new that come into the scene and then be introduced to something that they weren't prepared for and to be thrown in, especially when they become stars and not being able to handle it and getting away from the reason why they're doing what they do because they come in for the talent or whatever. And then when everything else that comes with it is thrown at them and they're not ready for it, it affects them definitely long term. And like, of course, there's people I know personally where it's like they become reclusive and it's like they don't even want to do anything anymore. And that's the reason why a lot of artists like just disappear because the pressures of having to live up to what the public wants you to be as opposed to who they really are is enough in itself. And it'll definitely affect people who are not even involved in the game. So somebody that's like, and that's why I don't understand when people are like, when people get mad that if a celebrity's out with their family, or they're like, oh, they need to make time. And I'm like, that's not fair, because you don't like being bugged when you're walking down the street when you just left work. So you can imagine somebody who is on 364 days a year, and that one day they want to be off, just because you happen to run into them. And even if they're being respectful, you want to call them all kinds of names. And it's just pitiful. Like people don't take it.
And just to not know who's real. You know,
Yeah.
When you're a celebrity, I live in my neighborhood. My mailman comes and puts things in my mailbox. If I was a celebrity, somebody would be going there trying to grab my mail, taking pictures of what's in my box, taking pictures who comes out my house, who comes in, how long they were there, what I ordered, did I tip big enough, did I not do? I mean, just all this kind of stuff. What did I wear? I want to just go out and buy something. I can't go out and do this. I have to have security with me. You know, maybe I'm just trying to go get, some lipstick real quick. Oh, what color lipstick did she buy? I mean, it's too, I can't imagine that. Oh, she was late to go pick up her child. She was being neglectful. Oh, just, all of that. It's a lot.
I mean, I go through it now. Now let me stop. Let me stop. But the smile, people just want to see me not smile.
And then also when you think about celebrities aging too.
Yeah.
She don't look the way she used to look. She got this. Oh, he doesn't look the way he looks on TV in real life. She's dating somebody younger. He's dating someone old. I mean, it's just something else.
It's always something.
It's always something. It's always something, That's why when you come into this industry, you really have to hold on to who you are. Sometimes the brokenness in you, people will take advantage of it. You know what I mean? I've never had situations in this industry like these, what do they call it? Things that Cassie's going through, and I've never been treated like that,
Like I said, even through whatever struggles I've had in life, it still wouldn't even touch the tip of what some of the people go through that don't even ask for it.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I've had discussions. I'm pretty sure you've had discussions with people who just don't want to do things because they don't want to deal with the pressures that come with it, the stress that comes with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, if like I use me as an example, when I was in MC Lyte's video, for people to still view me in that way, where I've gained weight over the years, and and I look slightly different, and people want, it's especially when it comes to, I can't imagine for somebody like Halle Berry, or somebody like even Janet Jackson. I remember Penny. I remember like her first album and stuff like that. She still looks good. Don't get me wrong, but being older, it's like actually Pam Grier, perfect example. Pam Grier, and like I said, she's much older now.
Foxy Brown, right? Yeah.
But I'm looking at Foxy Brown, but I'm getting Rosie Grier.
I'm gonna give you one up, Jane Kennedy.
Oh Lord. Lord, Jane Kennedy,
Oh, you men love Jane Kennedy, boy, back in the day.
Man. Anyway, I
took you back, right? Jane Kennedy. Yeah. You see that big spot you have on your face? That whole memory that you just went all the way back to the Bronx.
She was it before. I mean, even she levels above Nia Long, levels above Beyonce, levels above Jane Kennedy. Sorry, people.
And that is not Big said talking there. That is little young man said who was looking at Jane Kennedy and the Right On and the Word Up magazine or whatever we used to read back in those days, you know? Jane Kennedy.
And that was even before the huh?
Felicia Rashad. All of them.
Today she can, excuse me. I've seen Rashad.
Y'all still like Rashad though.
She can babysit me, and I hate this. Excuse me for saying this, but Jasmine Guy. I've seen recent pictures of her, and mind you, she wasn't exactly young when she was on the Cosby Show, but
a different world.
Seeing how she's aged, and she's younger than Felicia Rashad, but you wouldn't know it. Yeah. And some people, like I said, and this is definitely not disrespectful towards her because, but I loved Whitley. Oh my God. And I look at her now and, because the Whitley, when the Cosby Show and A Different World, I was literally just getting into college or right in high school. So if she's playing college, then I'm like a couple of years behind her. But I look at her now. I know I look younger than I am, but when I look at her now, it looks like she went to high school with my mother. And like I said, I'm not being disrespectful, but I'm just saying, but she was always older, but she played a younger person. And I do have, I think it's human nature to keep a vision of who you liked when it comes to celebrities and things of that nature. Actually, I can't even say that because I've seen some women from high school that I look at, I've seen recently. I'm like, whoa, what happened to you? And that's mean,
Sade looks exactly the same.
Huh?
Sade looks exactly the same.
Oh, yeah, man.
Maya looks exactly the same.
Yeah, and Maya, yeah. I gotta stop because I'm just like, yeah. I don't want people looking at me like I'm some type of pervert or there's something wrong with me. Even if that's the case, I just don't want you to think it. but like you were saying, people feel like they have to keep up that image because of what I just did. Like I said, because if I'm imagining Jane Kennedy as the Jane Kennedy from 78 and we're in 2025 and isn't she deceased?
I don't think so. I think Jane Kennedy is still with us. Mm-hmm.
So if I run into Jane Kennedy now, I'm looking for the Jane Kennedy from 78, 84, whatever, and it's literally 40 years later, 50 years later.
50 years later.
And I'm looking, and it's like and it's kind of unfair because then, like I said, I'm looking at her like, man, if this, that, and the other, but not being disrespectful. And like I said, to have to live up to what the public perception is can be stressful. Because I know some people that haven't seen me since high school, I still look the same. People say that my face hasn't changed, but I've also gained weight. But it's like I'm supposed to gain weight because.
But see, the difference is though the public perception for an actor or celebrity can be the reason why they get work or they don't get work.
That's true,
right?
Yeah.
So you can still do what you do,
Yeah.
But the public now, if you are a heartthrob at one time, but now every role you're getting is the mother or the grandmother of somebody. You know what I mean? It's hard, and when you're in a culture that says you don't have to get old, you can just get this surgery or that surgery, and let me give you my doctor's number. You're also doing that to maintain your job. Yeah. Going back to publicity a little bit is even hard as a publicist. You're constantly learning. You have to constantly evolve. Yeah. Because as we were talking about the projects that I worked, those are all old school projects, right? So when you mention those things, you're also dating yourself.
Yeah.
You could have an artist or a celebrity say, well, she's worked with such and such back in the day. Is she able to work on a project today? Does she still have current sensibilities? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and this industry is not one that appreciates that wisdom.
Yeah, they're not forgiving when it comes to people getting older, you know.
No, I mean, unless you have found a way to reinvent yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
Charlie Wilson's of the Ron Isley. Ron Isley actually started to look kind of sexy, like what's going on with him? But I'm saying, Gladys Knight still looks good. You have to keep reinventing yourself. And for Ron Isley and Charlie Wilson, theirs came through Snoop Dogg and R. Kelly. They were able to reinvent themselves. So.
Yep.
But we still gonna call ourselves vintage, okay? Vintage.
Oh, you know what it was? Seasoned.
What?
That's what you use vintage. I use seasoned.
Seasoned. Okay, I'll go with seasoned too.
That's why when we were talking about it earlier, I'm like, and then it came to, I was like, oh, I always tell people I'm seasoned.
I'm seasoned.
The younger generation, like when they find out how old I am, I'm like, yeah, but I'm seasoned. But I'm like, but if you don't realize how old I am, you're not looking at me as an OG or an elder. Still out there, and I don't look as old as I am,
Right.
And I love telling people that I'm 57 because I get the look. What? I'm like, yep.
Mm-hmm.
I still got all my hair. As a matter of fact, I have more hair now. No balding.
And I've seen your hair when it's out. It looks so beautiful.
Thank you.
It is so full and beautiful. I'm like, oh my goodness.
I had to go back and forth, but yeah. So I get teased from like older guys who are balded, who have bald heads because they can't grow hair anymore.
But one thing said is that the artists who are out now will never know a time like we knew.
Yeah.
In the industry. They will never know a time like we knew in the industry.
Yep. Unless
what happened in the 90s in this industry, that was the time.
And I think that's why some people, the older people, are more appreciative of what we went through based on what we're doing now. The people that are still involved. And I would tell people, like with the younger guys I hang out with, when they're going to like 2-3 parties a week, and they're like, yo, I'm like, we did 4 or 5 parties a night.
Night
during the week. We went home to take a shower to get back to work the next day.
And so we had a breakfast spot. We had a breakfast spot, the diner that we would go to eat and then keep going.
Yeah. I'm like, y'all are not impressing me at all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, no. If y'all saw the things, I'm like, man. And they really think they're doing it. We really think they're doing it. And I'm like, y'all aren't doing shit. I'm like, come on. I'm like, and I said that our I hate to say this, our generation, we started everything that y'all are doing now. They wasn't doing that when we were out there doing it. So
and we know how to do it the old school way and the new school way. Yeah. They don't. If the phones and stuff break down, done. Done.
And another difference is that we had expense accounts, so we wasn't even buying. And we would, if Jackie, myself, and 3 other people hung out. One night I took care of the bill and charged it to the company. Jackie took care of it the next night. Then somebody else took care of it. And it's like we all benefited from the works of our labor, and the fact that like we had a great time. And man, yeah.
And you used to have the bomb ass parties at Negril.
Yeah.
All those off the chain.
I'm gonna tell you what's funny. Negril Village just got back their liquor license. And they just asked me to do parties there again. Literally, this was 2 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, one, it's been like maybe like 8-9 years since I did like regular parties. And I was there for 14 years.
Right.
And I'm like, maybe I'll do a party, but a weekly party.
Those parties were bomb.
I'm like, I've made some great money, had some great times. I've actually and with the parties I had, people actually did deals or connected at my parties or because of my parties. And it was just a great time. And I said if I had the energy, I would think about it. But I'm like, man, the only way I go to parties if it's like at 6 o'clock and there's an open bar or Derbs or whatever.
Oh my God.
I'm spoiled.
Yeah.
I've been spoiled. Y'all are the reason I'm spoiled because you publicists and record companies and labels would always
Oh,
invite
we
us
had the
out.
cards back then, boy. We had the cards back then. Flying
Man,
people around and car service and, you know, sending cars to pick people up and doing all sorts of stuff. Now,
yes,
no, it ain't like that, you know. You get a Zoom.
yeah. But I can't front. But the thing is, maybe not with record companies because like a lot of other companies have been like they do Ubers now. Like they send you the
Uber One.
Uber code and stuff like. No, I'm talking about as far as like the Uber codes. Like the event I was supposed to go to last night, they sent the Uber code,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, even knowing I had that, like I said, it was a time thing. It wasn't a well, I can't do it because I can't afford it. No, they're like, don't worry about that. We got you.
Mm-hmm.
I went to I just came back from New Orleans a couple of weeks ago, and they took care of everything. Like
Mm-hmm.
the only time I went in my pocket was to make sure that my wallet was still in there. So it's like
Those are the perks, right? Or a media person. You guys get some good perks sometimes. And you know when
yeah,
all the parties and all the events, you know, because you get invited to them,
yeah,
you know? It's
but
crazy.
I just appreciate it.
It's been a wonderful ride. We still riding though. We still
Never-
going. So,
some of
so
us
now
are still driving.
the world of film and music and business. I'm doing a lot of different things, you know.
Yeah,
I still love what I do.
and that's a good thing. This might be like my last question. Like, the one important thing that a lot of people don't realize until they either get there or they can't get past it is the transition. Because, like I said, I did party promotions. I've probably done everything but publicity, to be honest. But the transition, like, when did you know that you transitioning to something outside of music would be um beneficial for not only your bottom line but for your soul?
I think for me, it's because I understand what publicity is. Publicity is not relegated to one industry. You can be
Yeah,
a publicity for a water bottle brand, you know, and you can find a way to integrate entertainment and music into it. You may say, hey, you want to bring the Water Boys of Atlanta in as ambassadors of this water company, you know. So, and I don't just do publicity. I also do activations and events as well, you know, and brand partnerships and all that kind of stuff, you know. So for me, the reason why I made the change and started to mix it up is because of what I was saying earlier. I got tired of people thinking that I was a one-trick pony.
yeah,
You know, you just do pop, you just do CHH gospel, you just do film, you do publicity. Is about knowing how to create, present, tell, and package a story. And that's what we do all day. We put together stories and we send you emails and position them for coverage, you know? So
yeah,
if you know how to do it for this, you got to know how to do it for the glasses, you
yeah,
know? These glasses are amber. They're a throwback to, you know, a modern day version of the cat glasses that were worn by such and such, you know? You know how to do it for a water bottle, you know? This bottle is different from other bottles. It's not what's in it, it's the color of the bottle, and you know, which represents the pristine lakes of the such and such, you know? So it's knowing how to story tell.
yeah.
And
That's
once
what,
you know how to do that, it's just about figuring out who to tell that story to. What is the right audience? How do I connect with them that I need to tell the story to? That's all it is, you know? And so once I understood that, I understood, and I tell people coming up in this industry now that you don't have to work just entertainment. If you're a publicist, you're a publicist. It doesn't have to be just entertainment, you know? People think, okay, I want to be an entertainment publicist because entertainment to people is sexy. It's a lot of work.
a lot of work. But let me ask you, like, as a publicist, how do you, for lack of a better word, how do you handle rejection when it comes to not being able to get your clients to the publications or outlets that they want to get?
Rejection is hard because a lot of times you take it personally, you internalize it, especially if you are the type of publicist that really cares about getting results for your clients, yeah, and really cares about the art or the creation of the person. You know, you want to do your best for them. You know, you want to see their success. You know, sometimes what that is trying to figure out how to tell the story differently. Sometimes a no is just a no.
Yeah.
Everything is not going to be right for everyone, but sometimes there are angles that you can present that'll make the story attractive to someone.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell a story that I tell all the time. There was a bakery that I came across when I lived in New York called Shakur Sweet Tooth. And this is connected to Black enterprise. I went to a Kwanzaa party. And I'm not a person, I don't like cheesecake, you know, all that kind of stuff. I don't like it, you know. And I went to a Kwanzaa party and someone had this sweet potato cheesecake. And they insisted that I taste it. And I was like, I don't eat cheese. I don't like cheesecake. I'm not gonna like it, you know? He said, try it, Jackie, try it. I tried it. That cheesecake was so good. Like I can taste the butter and the lemon zest and the vanilla. The nutmeg. I could separate out the flavors of what this person put in this. It was so good. So I decided when I was going to the next housewarming party that I was going to go to this bakery and get this cheesecake to take to the party. Because now I'm going to do everybody else like how I was done. You got to taste this. And I went to the restaurant at the end of the day when he was almost closing. And I told him my story about how I did not like cheesecake, but his cheesecake was amazing. And he, for some reason, like I said, I talk to people and I start asking questions. When I was younger, I wanted to be a Barbara Walters, you know, like really dig to understand things, you know, and understand people. What is the real story? This is before I really knew to become a publicist, you know? So I'm sitting there, I'm talking to him, we have a conversation. He says, you know, are you in a rush? I said, no. He said, well, stay. You know, I stayed after the restaurant was closed. He says, I want to know what you do because the kind of questions you were asking me. And he had customers behind me. He said, just stay. And I stayed. And I said, well, I'm a publicist, but I don't do restaurants and stuff. I do music and entertainment and stuff like that. I was just curious about you because for you to make something this good, there's a story.
Yeah.
And he was just like, well, I make the best sweet potato cheesecake. Everybody thinks Junior's is the best. And I was like, why is your cake good? And he said, because I use fresh ingredients. Why do you use fresh ingredients? I just kept asking him, like, what you take, the kind of care that you took in making this is unprecedented.
Yeah.
So I want to know, why is the cheesecake good? And he says, well, I just make good cheesecake. And I said, no. His wife was sitting there looking at me and she says, Shakur, tell her. And I'm like, okay, listen. This little restaurant that he had there in Brooklyn with its blue and yellow checkered floors, very quaint little restaurant. He told me that he used to shoot dope. He used to be a heroin addict and he used to shoot dope in back of that restaurant. He has robbed and stolen from every single establishment up and down that street when he was a heroin addict. And when he went to jail, because of not having fresh food and fresh ingredients, when he came out, because baking was his therapy, you know, he started baking with one hand mixer, and he just decided that everything was going to be fresh and tastes a certain way because he had been in jail. Then he decided to come back to the same neighborhood that he destroyed as an addict and rent out this space and rebuild his life and this bakery right there. Because that was where he was at the lowest part of his life. Blocks down, he opened a second bakery where he bakes all his stuff. He was taking kids off the street, latchkey kids, people, you know, from the hood, people that have come out of jail, and teach them how to bake. And I sat there and I said, you know, see, this, everybody's got a story. You know what I mean? Your story is not about the cheesecake and about the cheesecake, you know, sweet potatoes and whatever. Your story is that you are changing your neighborhood and your life one sweet tooth at a time. That is your story. That is why your cheesecake is good. It's because of all the life that you've lived that you put into the cheesecake. He was just like, oh my God, you know, there's something in the Bible, and Bob Marley said too, the stone that the builder refused. He had been refusing that part of his story, you know, because he didn't think it was relevant or it was negative. He didn't want to relive it. And I told us, that's your story. That's what's going to get you the press. You know what I mean? Is being unafraid of telling a story. And it worked. And he hired me to be his publicist. And we got that feature in Black Enterprise, you know, and we got, you know, Fox Good Day, you know, New York and all these places to come there because he was willing to tell that story. That's what I do as a publicist, you know, is help identify the story and tell the story. So that's what it is.
Yeah, because like you said, like picture me a story about somebody who has great food isn't really going to impress me.
But the why, just that story you now, that's the story. You know what I mean? When I call you and say, this man is changing lives in this neighborhood, one sweet tooth at a time. Cheesecake is just the result of the whole life that he's lived and what he's doing in the community to change the life of the children and, you know, men who are coming home from jail. That's a story, you know? So that's what I learned to do as a publicist, is really understand the story and how to package it, you know, and help and help to present it in such a way that it can get a feature in like a Black Enterprise.
That's cool. Well, I'm going to because I'm looking at the time. I didn't realize we was on for like 9 hours.
Yeah.
Because I have to actually go pick up my drugs, prescription medicine, people.
Oh my God. Well, thank you so much for.
No, thank you for agreeing to do this, because like I said,
share mine. I didn't expect it, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, like I said, and that's the beauty of what I'm doing, is because I want people to hear and know who you are, your story, and to be given a platform, like I said, to be able to have people hear it, you know.
Yeah,
and I do appreciate that you agreed to it. Is there any social media or any contact that you would like for people if they want to contact you or had any questions?
Yes, I'm reachable every single place at Jackie O and Co. JACKIEO and ANDCO everywhere.
Yep. But thanks once again for your time. And you know what's funny? I always like carve out like 30 minutes because I'm like 30 minutes should be enough. But we've been on for 2 hours and I feel we could go on for another 2 hours. And if it wasn't for the fact that, like I said, I do have to like actually get these drugs so I can use them so I can stay alive. Let me stop. Somebody comes in on that. Just me at that part and be like, Seth is on drugs. No, I mean prescription. Huh?
Are you okay?
Yeah. I'm diabetic.
Okay.
And I'm actually, my last test results were better, and you know, I'm just back to the gym, so I'm I still got my dimples.
Your dimples and your smile
Yeah.
and your beautiful hair.
You know, so I'm good. You know.
Did Nia Long see you with your hair out?
Yeah. My hair was out. I'm gonna send you the clip. I'm gonna send you the clip.
Okay.
Because my friend actually cut it up for like a minute that just captures that. So I'm gonna find that and send that to you because
okay.
Yeah, I should have that at the beginning of my show whenever it comes on.
That's funny. That's okay. Let me let you go get your vintage stuff.
Yeah, before but thank you once again, and for everyone that tuned in, thank you. I appreciate it. Once again, my friends are better than yours, and if you feel otherwise, show me, and I'll show you better. Until then, till the next time, Big Said Industry Cosign. Thanks again.
Thank you.
That's it. And why does it say? Because I'm trying to stop it, and it's telling me to please upgrade. What is this thing doing? It's not letting me end the stream. This has never done this before.
Just leave the studio.
But I will still be on it. Then I guess I can just literally just go off and.
You think it's still recorded though?
Yeah, because it keeps telling me, please upgrade your plan to start live streaming and recording at the same time. I'm not trying to do it.
What if you hit that recording in progress? Can you hit stop?
Well, I put stop recording. Oh, so okay, now